So what roster spots are really up for grabs when training camp opens up? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day, each and every day. I appreciate you all so much. And thank you so much for my hashtag everydayers that hung out all off-season long. Because we're here. We're done. This is the last show that we're going to do before the rookies have reported for training camp. They report on Sunday, and training camp will be underway, and we can start talking about those reports and stuff. So thank you so much for hanging out. We've got a lot of Everyman left to do. We'll still keep plugging away at that as training camp goes on, but now we got some actual practices and stuff to talk about. It's going to get exciting and start ramping up. So hello. And if you're new, you're just tuning in, hello, welcome. My name is Luke. You can find this show, just search out Locked On Vikings wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, including YouTube or even Amazon Fire and Roku if you download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today on the show, I want to go over some position battles, but the easy answer is, like, you can go to any Vikings podcast and they will tell you that the wide receiver 3 position battle is kind of interesting. Is Brandon Powell good enough? Is someone going to step up? Are they going to trade for somebody? I'm sure every Vikings outlet has some version of that. I've talked about it plenty on here too. So I want to instead talk about the actual roster roles that are like up for grabs. And that's not necessarily starting jobs. There are swing backup jobs. There are special teams roles. What roles are available to a lot of people that could get somebody on the roster? We can talk about, who's in the running for those, as well as the Everyman series. We will be doing a little bit of that at the end as well. So the two position battles that most people are going to go into when you hear about like position battles are the wide receiver 3, and then I'll just kind of say the situation at quarterback, because a lot of different people could get a lot of different roles. Like, there's a lot of different permutations of how that could turn out at cornerback. Obviously, with wide receiver 3, it's a little bit more straightforward. It's just who gets more snaps in 11 personnel with Jefferson and Addison on the field. Is it going to be Powell? Is it going to be Sherfield? Is it going to be Jalen Naylor stepping up? Who's it going to be? Somebody who's not on the roster yet and all that. That is going to be kind of interesting. However, I think Brandon Powell kind of has that job and it's his to lose. And considering how well he did in camp last year and how highly Kevin O'Connell thinks of him in particular, took the time to take him over from the Rams and really loved him there as well, the special teams role as well. Like, Brandon Powell very much in the driver's seat for that job, with a whole bunch of other like contenders kind of like trying to poke at his reign. The corner position, on the other hand, is a little more complicated, right? As it stands right now, if they had their druthers, if they had to start a game tomorrow and everybody plays well enough in camp to justify it, you'd have Byron Murphy on the inside, and you'd have Shaq Griffin on the outside, and then you would have a competition kind of wide open between a Caleb Evans, Mekhi Blackman, and Andrew Booth, and maybe Dwight McGlothern is kind of a dark horse there. Those are kind of your corners, and I always feel like I'm forgetting one, but no. I'm not. Maybe I'm thinking of Kyrie Jackson. But it doesn't necessarily have to go down that way if Shaq Griffin struggles, or if none of those guys are good enough to take a starting job. If Caleb Evans and Booth are bad, Booth gets cut or whatever. There has been talk of like Booth getting cut. I don't think the roster pressure is there anymore for that. Unfortunately, I mean, I guess that's just kind of how the math works out now, is that there just is room for him unless you're like rostering AJ Green instead, or you're rostering like 5 corners. Like, Booth will have a place on the roster, I think. But hey, there's every world where he takes another step forward. He took a little step forward last year, takes another step forward, then maybe there's something. But if none of that happens, they would kick Byron Murphy outside, and I think they would play Mekhi Blackman on the inside instead, and that would be kind of their 11 personnel, and Mekhi Blackman would just be like a true rotational nickel, and Murphy and Griffin would just be your outside corners. And I think they kind of don't want to do that because that would put Byron Murphy in matchups with a bunch of guys that are way bigger than him outside, these flankers, these big 6'3" guys, and you don't necessarily want those matchups all day long. I think Murphy is probably better suited for the matchups that he would find on the inside. I think he can play outside just fine, and they'll probably do a lot of both because when you're not in nickel personnel, then you probably have both those guys just playing outside anyways. But against 11, against slot receivers and stuff, I think they want Byron Murphy taking that. So they want one of these guys to step up. And that's maybe the pivotal position battle. I think that's the biggest one to watch. As much as everybody loves to talk about wide receiver 3, that's a rotational role at the end of the day. That's going to be a role that's on the field, maybe 6 out of 10 snaps. And the corner position is going to affect what happens every single snap. Even if that means, it's Shaq Griffin and Byron Murphy on the outside, and whether it's somebody else coming into the nickel, whether Byron Murphy is playing full-time only slot, or whether or not he's kicking outside and inside, like that changes a lot. So somebody step up, please. But there are other position battles that are maybe not quite as sexy, not quite as, startery, but are still, I think, finite singular roles that only one guy gets, and there are multiple guys that could get them. For example, backup center / guard. That's a role, right? You kind of have your swing O-line backups. You got your two main O-line backups. You got your starting 5, and you've got like a guard tackle, and you've got a center guard. And then sometimes you'll have like a swing tackle, or you'll have another guy. But if you think about like the 4 backup O-line that you usually have, if you keep 9 O-line, maybe there's a 5th if you want to keep 10. You kind of have to have some positional versatility there. The tackle side feels fairly solved. I don't know if there's a lot of pressure there from, Darisaw O'Neal and then David Questenberry and Walter Rouse. There's, in terms of people who actually play tackle, that's it, and undrafted rookies. So there's no real pressure there, but on the inside, then you start to get a little bit of pressure. Assuming you have Ingram, Bradbury, and then Reisner, Brandel, one's a starter, one's a backup, right? So there's 4 of them, and you've got your 4 tackles, so you've got 8, which means there's 1, maybe 2 spots left over on the line to split between Tyrese Robinson, who has made teams before, Henry Bird, who's made teams before, Dan Feeney, who's started before, and Michael Juergens, who's a draft pick. Of those 4, I think you keep 1, maybe 2, if 2 guys really, really show out and they kind of force the issue on you, which would be a good problem to have. But I think status quo would be to keep 1 of those. And those guys are all competing for the job that isn't taken by, that isn't occupied by all of the other backups that we've already talked about, right? Walter Rouse, he's your tackle guard. David Questenberry, he's your swing tackle. Blake Brandel or Dalton Reisner, there's a competition. Either of those guys can be starters and the other one's just good enough to be in the building, but you don't really have a true center guard. Reisner has taken a little bit of center time in the past, but I wouldn't call him a true center guard. I think he's more of a pure guard. Not in the way that Feeney and Juergens have, where Juergens played most of his college career at center and only played 1 year of guard, right? So this backup role between those 2 guys, and you keep 1 of them. Those are the roles that, there is 1 roster spot slotted away for backup center guard, and only 1 guy gets to be that guy. Feeney and Juergens, it's interesting. I like Juergens' tape at Wake Forest. Obviously, 7th round pick, you got to be pretty reserved about that, but for whatever it's worth. I liked the tape that I could get my hands on, including the tape against Clemson, which is always a good D-line school, and he was absolutely dunking on him. So I am excited to see what he can do and if he can find his way on the roster. But either way, I think both of those guys are pretty good practice squad candidates if they do get cut. And of course, they don't get poached by somebody else. They could end up on somebody else's active roster, and then good luck to you. But I like them as, practice squad depth there as well. Those are the kind of roles that I'm talking about. There are also some totally doomed position battles that are maybe going to get some press as battles, but I kind of think maybe are already decided. So that'll be next, as well as the Everyman series. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by eBay Motors. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and keep that thing chugging along, whether you just need it to get you from point A to point B, or you really see it as part of your style, or if it is something that, is important for keeping your family safe and keeping your family on schedule and all that. Whatever your car is there for, it's probably really important to you. And that means it's really important to take care of it. So if you need a new part, and you are looking for a deal, go check out eBay. They have 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. Browse through it. Go find what fits your car. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you get the parts you need at the prices you want. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Today's episode is also brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. It is a social media, and a lot of people that maybe will be qualified for your job are on LinkedIn and LinkedIn only. 70% of prospective employees of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're not looking. Go to LinkedIn Jobs. 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. When you're done here, go check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 stream. Get all of the skinny on what's going on around the NFL, Ayuk, and the whole wide world of sports on their 24/7 live stream. Shows just like this one coming at you all day long, all around the world of sports. There are three position battles that have gotten a lot of press that I kind of think are done. And they shouldn't be done. But I kind of think that's just the way that it is, that you kind of decide it very quickly, and now it's mostly just a formality. And this is more of a political thing. Like, this is really kind of reading the social of it rather than looking at these guys on their merits. Because if it were me, I would say, okay, everything is open. And I'm sure, again, in a formal sense, everything is. But looking at something like Jaren Hall and Nick Mullins. Nick Mullins has the backup job right now. He's QB2. Jaren Hall is QB4. So they're not even playing him over J.J. McCarthy, who they're not even really seriously considering giving any playing time to until he's ready, right? So it's already like bleak there. And the thing about being QB4 when you're in camp is you don't get to do a lot of the drills. Whenever they're doing individuals, the top three quarterbacks are throwing routes to the receivers, and the fourth one is a handoff machine on the run drills. That's probably what Jaren Hall is going to do, and that makes it really, really difficult to kind of force your way back into the conversation to make the team. So if you're Jaren Hall and you want to make the team, here's what needs to happen, and a lot of it's out of your control. Nick Mullins needs to go out in the preseason. He'll probably start in the preseason. You're probably not going to see Sam Darnold play at all. I'm going to guess you'll see a little bit of Mullins and a lot of J.J. McCarthy, and then maybe a little bit of Jaren Hall at the end of games, right? But Mullins will play a little bit in the preseason, and, well, maybe not. Maybe they'll just sit him and just let J.J. get all the reps. But if he does play, you need him to go absolutely catastrophically nuclear. You need interceptions everywhere. You need, plays misexecuted. You need screw ups in the huddle. You need a Nick Mullins meltdown. And we've had Nick Mullins meltdowns when he got in. So it's not an unprecedented thing, but you kind of need to hope for that. And you need to hope that Nick Mullins gets enough time on the field to make those mistakes. If Mullins does just sit next to Sam Darnold in a baseball cap the whole game while J.J. McCarthy goes out and gets his reps, and like you go out and you do fine, like you're auditioning for another team at that point. The way that they've just structured this so far is implying that they've already made this decision. Now, I've advocated, I think that Jaren Hall, he had 24 good dropbacks and 24 bad dropbacks, right? Like that, he was good for a few drives in against Atlanta in the end of the Green Bay game, and then the other Green Bay game, he was a disaster, and that's kind of that. Obviously, J.J. McCarthy gets in the building, and the idea of this like Devy fifth rounder thing is a lot easier to discard. So I think that they're just ready to kind of say, yeah, it's all right, good luck. the world exists. Nothing is written in stone, but it's written in something. Maybe it's written in stone because graphite technically is a stone, but you can still erase it. I'm getting ahead of myself. The other position battle that's kind of like this that I think is maybe a formality only is the kicker battle between Will Reichard and John Parker Romo. John Parker Romo did join, and he joined before Will Reichard. Yeah, you got to have your rookie earn his keep and all that, but I have a really hard time seeing an NFL team abandoning its draft pick for an XFL guy based on, a couple of kicks, like a small sample, as small a sample as you get with kicking. And the thing about the kicker battle is they aren't going to line up and kick 100 times every single day. You'll blow your leg out doing that. So you really do only get to evaluate them on the 5 or 6 kicks at the end of practice. So you get 5 or 6 reps a day to evaluate these guys. Their priors are going to come in quite a bit. And in history of teams that draft kickers in the 4th or 5th round, or I guess 6th was Reichard, but teams that draft kickers outside of the Mr. Irrelevant picks of the late 7th, you're going to stick by that guy for a little while until he's a 3-miss kick-tastrophe in Lambeau, and then you have to cut him, and he goes and gets really good in Las Vegas. I think that there's going to be a bit of a leash and a bit of a loyalty there. So it just doesn't feel that serious to me, but we don't have hard evidence of that. That's me just kind of speculating based on precedent and past behavior of NFL teams. And in particular, the Cleveland Browns, I believe Kwesi was there when they drafted Zane Gonzalez, and they stuck by him until he actually had, I think, a kick-tastrophe the same day that Daniel Carlson had his. I don't know. Again, I'm getting distracted. The one that is not as much of a formality, that doesn't seem to be as much of a formality as I think it will be, is Brandel and Reisner. I think that battle's just done. They are not giving Reisner first-team reps. They're not rotating him. They're not considering it. They're not, it's not trying to light a fire under anybody's ass. It's just over. It's like when people said that there was a battle between Garrett Bradbury and Austin Schlottmann. Schlottmann never took a first-team rep. He never got a chance to win that job. And I don't think Reisner will either. He is, the way that he talks about it in interviews, he's clearly been told and has accepted that he is a backup. He has been given incentives for starting in his contract. So you say the opportunity is in front of you, and if you take it, we'll pay you more. But he's also been given incentives just for making the team, which implies that that's not something that they're even sure is going to happen. Meanwhile, Brandel's been taking all of the first team reps exclusively for the entire offseason. And when that happened, reporters poked around and got the sense that it was real, that they really did say, no, you're going to be the starter. Congratulations. Here's your opportunity. Go get it. Anybody can lose a job, right? You can give up 3 sacks and lose your job. But again, I think that's out of Reisner's control. But perhaps the position battle that is the hardest to nail down is the one, I'm calling it the Dean Lowry Memorial role. You'll have Harrison Phillips and probably Jonathan Bullard stacking up the defense on, every down. And then when you're in base personnel and you need that third guy, that was when Dean Lowry would come in. And who that guy is going to be this year is between Jerry Tillery, maybe Jihad Ward, maybe James Lynch, who held that role when Zimmer was the coach, or maybe it's Jonah Williams, who will be the subject of today's Everyman series. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is online therapy made easy. I have benefited a lot from therapy in the last few years that I have been doing it. It's helped me keep an even keel. It has helped me deal with both the good and the bad and try to kind of keep growing from it. But if it's something that you are interested in trying out, but you don't know where to start, give BetterHelp a shot. They can design their therapy around keeping it online, keeping it flexible, whether it's, video conferences or phone calls or, after work hours, however you have to make it work, they can work around your schedule. And they'll pair you with a therapist they think is right for you. But if you don't like that therapist, you can switch at no additional charge. And that is a really important part of the process. You might not always jive with the first person that gives you a phone call. So try a couple until you get somebody that you can actually have that kind of connection with. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. I have been in my life to one NFL scouting event. It was the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl. I do want to get down to the combine one of these years. It kind of hasn't worked out for one reason or another. But I do want to try to get to the combine someday. But I've never gone to the Senior Bowl. I'm not as interested in that one. And the only reason I ended up at the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl is because it was in my backyard. It's in the Rose Bowl, and I live right not too far from there. And that, Locked On was able to kind of get me in so I could see that event. It was an interesting thing. But if you're unfamiliar, the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl it's not a serious scouting event. It's a lot of undraftable guys are there. There's a lot of baristas and accountants trying to play for, like, Jeff Fisher was the coach of one of the teams. But it's a scouting event just like any other. And while the names are smaller, you're still going to have representation from all 32 teams there. It was this very interesting experience. And every once in a while, somebody comes through there that actually is going to have a future in the league. Jonah Williams was not a highly recruited player, and there were a bunch of reasons for that. He was an Idaho football player. He was relatively new to D-line. He only did D-line his junior year, and he was new to it. So his tape was suffering from that, but was good enough to at least get people to maybe raise an eyebrow. The other problem was he was kind of a late bloomer, so he spent a lot of his high school playing time smaller than he would end up being when he actually played in college, and it's really hard to gauge that ahead of time. There are signs, but it's really hard to kind of know. And it's hard to know exactly how much they're going to bulk up, which some guys really put their mind to that and some guys don't. So it really scared off a lot of colleges. But the thing that really scared off a lot of colleges was the mission. Jonah Williams is the second Viking to have done, or the second actively a Viking to have done a mission with the Church of Latter-day Saints. Last year there was Kairis Tonga as well. So we sure do love Mormons here in Minnesota. So he did that 2-year mission, and that was kind of a non-negotiable thing for him. And there were a couple of schools that were willing to say, okay, you go do that. Maybe you'll grow up a little, right? Maybe you'll get up, you'll fill out a little bit. And when you come back, you can be a preferred walk-on. We'll give you every shot in the world to make this team. Good luck, right? But if he was willing to go to a smaller school, he could actually get a scholarship on his way back. And hey, if you're going to pay for me to go get my degree, I'm going to take that one. And that was Weber State. So this is going to be a small school kid kind of story. And he'll go do his mission. And when he comes back, he had actually lost a little bit of weight. And he was very rusty. He was excited to be back, and he kind of tried to hit the ground running with it. But he... on his first practice back of spring ball, like his first year with Weber State, he tore his labrum. And that would knock him out for the whole season. So we wait longer to see Jonah Williams play some football at a real size. And so he's only got 1 year of D-line experience under his belt or 2 years, I guess, because he played junior and senior year, he played D-line, and then went on a mission for 2 years, and then he sat out for another one. So he's about to be a sophomore in college with 2 years of D-line under his belt. So he's looking things up. He's trying to research and get a better sense. And it's kind of remarkable to people who knew him as a recruit and then look at him like actually in an NFL role. Because they knew him as a recruit going, this kid kind of has nothing. He doesn't have the size. He doesn't have the pedigree. He doesn't have the experience. He doesn't have this. He doesn't have that. He doesn't have that. Why are we talking about this guy again? But Weber State believed. And they get paid off for this because when he's out with his labrum injury, and we've talked quite extensively in other Everyman series entries about the sort of tedious process that is and how long it takes, he's looking up D-line and he's researching, trying to figure out, he's looking at the grades, right? And he's looking at just how much they all weigh. J.J. Watt and Joey Bosa and all that. Like the best pass rushers, what are they? They all weigh like around 270 or something like that. So he's like, okay, that's the goal, 270. That's the number he puts in his mind. So now we do the thing. We got protein shakes. We got fried rice with a bunch of eggs mixed in. We got, just trying to eat as much as you could, just gobbling up everything in sight, living in the weight room and trying to bulk up while you are also returning from that labrum injury. He will hit his weight goal, and when he takes the field as a sophomore, healed from everything, all the problems are out of the way now, yeah, it happens. Suddenly, everything clicks into place, and the people that believed in him at Weber State are vindicated. He'll play 3 good years there. Unfortunately, we're still dealing with the small school thing. So even though he is past the issues that affected him in recruiting, and they no longer affect him at all, he's still dealing with the repercussions of them, and he's not going to get a lot of interest. He's doing well enough to raise eyebrows. The proof is in the pudding. The tape is good, but you're a small school kid, and you're an older prospect now because you did this mission, right? And it's like all these different little things that are going to work against him. He will not get a combine invite. He will not get a Senior Bowl invite. I don't remember if the East-West Shrine Bowl was a thing yet, but he won't get invited to that either. Oh yeah, no, of course it was. This was also the 2020 draft cycle. And this is where he will go to the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl, which crucially happened before the pandemic shut everything down. So he got to actually do it. He hoped that would be enough to make it to the Rose, or to make it to the NFL draft. And so he goes to his parents' house during the draft to watch it with them. The weird Zoom draft, and you're sweating it out, right? You watch the first couple days and you're of course nervous for day 3, but like Jonah Williams knew he wasn't exactly going to get a call 35th overall, right? But day 3, he's sweating it out. And the 4th round goes, and the 5th round goes, and he is absolutely in the world where, he didn't like set an expectation that he was going to get drafted in the 4th round, and now he's disappointed about it. He knew the score. He knew where things were. But you still, after about pick 240, you kind of know. If your phone hasn't rung by now, you didn't get drafted. But if there was any disappointment about that, it fades pretty quickly. Because Jonah Williams gets a call mere minutes after the 255th pick of that draft wraps up. It's the Los Angeles Rams. They want to talk to him. They want to maybe bring him in for camp. And by the end of that night, he had signed an undrafted contract with the Rams. Of course, once he's in the NFL, everybody just knows him as the other Jonah Williams because there's the O-lineman that's like on the Bengals or wherever he is now. He's not that Jonah Williams. He's the Weber State Jonah Williams. But he will do the COVID season. Hard Knocks is there that year. And he'll spend the next few years actually making the Rams. And again, that sort of faith is paid out. Somebody has to take a leap of faith with Jonah Williams every time, and every time they are rewarded for doing so. Weber State says, no, we will give you a scholarship. And guess what? He was an All-American by the end of it. He's one of the best players on the team, and he helped them, right? And the Rams say, okay, we'll give you an undrafted free agent contract, even though there's all these reasons to believe that you're not going to work out, but he does. And he proves those people wrong. There's this kind of workhorse mentality to it, from taking something that can throw you in a lot of despair and that labrum injury and turning it into an opportunity to solve something that's been plaguing everyone's opinions of you for a long time. So now he gets to take that attitude into a camp, which is a wide open, messy competition. Anybody can make that team from there. It can be Tillery. Tillery can be knocked off. It can be Williams. It can be Jihad Ward. It can be any of these guys can show up and take that sort of third defense, you could call it a defensive end role if you want to use old school terminology, and take that role. It's his for the taking. There is nothing in his way. And for once, his play can do the damn talking. Talk to you next week when camp is open. I will see you all for that. And as always, Skull.